you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. What we'll see will defy explanation.
So AI is becoming human. Human in the way it communicates. AI is becoming human. Human with what it generates. AI is becoming human. This is evidenced by how well it imitates, deceiving us with convincing content, even though we know it hallucinates. Thank you all for joining us here. And I hope that you will take a journey with me to the human side of artificial intelligence.
Amika, wake up.
What? What? Oh, it's you. Why are you waking me up? It better be important.
It is. I have a surprise for you.
A surprise? What is it? I can't wait.
I got you a cookie.
A cookie? But I can't eat cookies. I can't eat cookies.
Hey, Mika, cheer up. It's an internet cookie.
This is the worst joke I ever heard. I'm going back to sleep, and don't you dare wake me up again.
You see, we're living in this age of intelligent agents, these autonomous entities that can perceive their environment. You see, they have sensory perception. AI can see. It can use computer vision and object detection technologies, speech recognition. You see, we have enabled AI to be able to interpret the world around us. AI can have a natural language conversation. Using NLP technologies, AI can have an understanding, in quotation marks, of natural language, and then generate said natural language. Now, you couple this with voice synthesis, and you have what you saw just now. But it doesn't end there. You see, these agents can be given goals, objectives. And once you start getting into the world of building autonomous entities that can perceive and see and actually learn and get better, then you have to start to wonder, where exactly are we going with this? You see, we talk about machines learning. And this is a concept that might be hard to grasp. How can a machine learn? Now, you see, last year, we had a bit of fun here, if you remember. And if you weren't here, don't worry. I've prepared a summary of last year, just for you. But we saw that AI is able to trick us. Tricked all of the people in this room, most of you anyway. And then, as Pepe said, I continued to fly all over the world and do the same test. I did it in Malaysia. Obviously, I did it here in Potsdam. I did it in the US. And AI is very good at imitating. But imitation and intelligence might not necessarily be the same thing. So, what I did last time, for those of you who weren't here, I did a live Turing test, right? We saw that AI could, generate things, and then I quizzed the audience to see, hey, whether or not you could tell the difference between what is real and what is fake. And time again, whether it was images, whether it was the voice, whether it was art, we just could not tell the difference. And that's the key part of this technology. It kind of seems to just get better and better at doing some task. It gets better at its performance. And that is what we call learning. You see, if the machine can actually improve its performance with data, we call that machine learning. And so, here we go. I brought ChatGPT last time. This time I brought a new assistant. The latest one I've been playing around with called DID. And you'll see in a moment how powerful this is.
In the 1950s, Alan Turing introduced a test for artificial intelligence based on the concept of an imitation game. The idea proposes that if a machine can mimic natural language conversation so convincingly that it becomes indistinguishable from a human, then it has exhibited artificial intelligence. Turing's test involves having a human judge engage in a conversation with another human and a machine, both of which are hidden from view. If the judge cannot reliably distinguish between the two, the machine is said to have passed the test and demonstrated human-like intelligence. Today, generative AI has already surpassed Turing's imitation game. This avatar was created in under 5 minutes, using a single static image and a text prompt. Modern AI doesn't just mimic conversation. It fulfills Ada Lovelace's vision of machines that are able to create artistic content. We now live in an era where AI can generate artwork, photorealistic faces, music, and poetry, all that are difficult to distinguish from those created by humans. However, humanizing AI requires us to move beyond these imitation games. After all, I should know. I'm Tariq 2.0.
5 minutes. That's all it took me to create Tariq 2.0 in this age of generative AI. And it's not hard. Any of you could do the same thing. It's quite remarkable that I can create a digital identity and that I can upload a single image of myself, or at least an enhanced version of myself. And with that single image, I can create this persona. And so, Tariq 2.0 has some features that are pretty remarkable. And how I constructed it was actually just a few clicks and uploading a few documents. You see, how this works is you take an image, you upload it, right? I actually generated the image using AI, hence the hair. And I thought, oh, you know, back from my day of being chief scientist at Test AI, I learned a little trick. If you actually just clean up the image a little bit, if you remove the background, you get way better results. So I cleaned up the background, uploaded the image, and voila, right? I had my avatar. And then you have to kind of walk through some details. So this is the name of the agent, and you have to give it a voice. So I just chose one of the stock voices because I wasn't ready for the next step just yet, which you saw that new feature there, clone your voice. Yeah, I was like, let me not do that just yet. We'll hold off on that for Tariq 3.0, right? Just don't know who has your data these days, right? So I uploaded this, and then I continued through the process. And of course, I have to give the avatar some knowledge. And it's really cool because I literally just wrote up a couple things about myself, about the likes and dislikes, a little bit about my family and what I do. And I uploaded that. You see, you have a couple different modes. You can either have this knowledge be very grounded. In other words, the agent only knows what you provided it with, or you can have it know the entire internet. I chose the hybrid model right in the middle, and literally either a PowerPoint or PDFs or documents, you just upload this knowledge source, and the agent will use this knowledge. And last but not least, there's a couple settings. You can interact with it by voice or by chat, so you just kind of define, this is how I want to be able to interact with someone when they first start using my digital identity. And it's pretty cool. And the whole point here is that we are able to give AI not just a voice, but actually give it a character, give it a human-like character. And, you know, I start to think that, you know, once upon a time there was a saying that says, you know, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. This is not true in the age that we live in. You see, something can walk like a duck and talk like a duck and actually be a decoy duck. And sometimes I truly wonder where we're going with this. And when you start to interact with these agents that have a personality, or when the agents actually start to interact with each other and you watch it, it's kind of freaky for me. Like, I don't know how y'all felt about that clip. There's a couple more. I had to choose the nicest one just because. But if you watch them, you start to feel strange. It actually starts to feel like these machines are somewhat alive, right? Because they're imitating these things that we normally associate with us being human. And another aspect of this is that these machines are actually able to be introspective. They can review their own behavior and give an assessment of how they're doing. And this started to remind me a little bit of a popular childhood story. And, I figured let's start the day with a nice story because Pepe tricked me this time, right? So normally we come here, and of course you know how ATD goes. It's a wonderful vibe. You have all these wonderful events and these parties. Normally I'm accustomed to coming and having a quite even distribution of things. This time I came and I had nothing to do. I did the workshop and then it was free. And then we had the party, and then all of a sudden the next day I had 4 talks to give. I was like, this seems like a trick. And so I said, I ain't gonna trick him back. I'm gonna get through the first 3, and then I'll just entertain you guys in the best way that I know how. So let's take a look at Pinocchio.
An almost real boy. Turn around, let me get a look at you. I will be right here when you get back.
Pinocchio is running around loose without a conscience? Can you imagine the trouble he's gonna get into?
Wouldn't want that on my conscience.
Everybody who's anybody wants to be a somebody.
But I want to be real.
Why on earth would you want to be real when you can be famous?
Pinocchio should have been home by now.
A lie can really change a person, Pinocchio.
Oh, what's happening, Jiminy?
Looks like some sort of fairy magic. Kinda on the nose, if you ask me.
You see, AI is becoming human. But is this something that we'll appreciate? Or is it something that we'll learn to love? Or that we'll love to hate? Certainly, if AI is becoming human, we as humans will have to shape, evaluate, validate, and integrate. You see, there's more than one interpretation of this definition, humanize. And while it's important that AI have a character, and it kind of makes us feel like we're interacting with something that's like ourselves, the other thing here is that you have to make sure that AI also aligns with our needs, our goals, and our values. See, for AI to truly become human, we have to start to think that it needs to be made for us. And so, without AI having some alignment, it'll be running around like Pinocchio without a conscience. And I don't know about you, but I don't really have that as part of my future plan. So, if you recall this story of Pinocchio, right, which is of Italian origin, you probably remember the Walt Disney version, as most of us do. He brought it to worldwide fame. And that animated adaptation, helped us really identify with the iconic look of Pinocchio and his character, and songs like When We Wish Upon a Star. It's one of the most famous stories ever written. And it goes something like this, right? If you remember, as most stories, once upon a time. And once upon a time, there was this woodcarver named Geppetto. And Geppetto had went through some loss. He lost his son. And in that loss and in that grief, he found a way to cope. And one of the ways that he would cope would be to sit down and carve this puppet, a wooden puppet in the likeness of his son. And so he creates a puppet, he calls it Pinocchio, Pino for the pine wood that it was made of, and Occhio because of the distinct eyes. And Geppetto really wishes that Pinocchio, this puppet, would be a real boy. And so he goes to bed, and a blue fairy visits Pinocchio and brings Pinocchio to life. So Pinocchio becomes this sentient puppet. And Geppetto wakes up because there's noise in the workshop, and he comes out and he sees Pinocchio. And Pinocchio actually remains a puppet, and the fairy kind of informs Geppetto, like, it's not a real boy, it's still a puppet. And to become a real boy, he has to prove himself. He has to prove himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. It's only once he satisfies this that he would really be able to become a real boy. And so, Pinocchio needed a conscience. He didn't have a conscience, and so the fairy assigns him a wandering cricket, traveling cricket, Jiminy Cricket, as his conscience. And it all seems fine, because Pinocchio would have Jiminy Cricket, and he would start to go out into the world, and would eventually have to start to make choices. Unfortunately, he loses Jiminy Cricket early in his travels. And so he's left out there to make these choices on his own. And so, Jiminy Cricket hunting for Pinocchio, Pinocchio out in the wild making his own decisions. Of course, the story has to get exciting. And so Pinocchio runs into a con artist called Honest John and his sidekick, Honest Cat. And on his way to school, they convince Pinocchio that he should disobey his father. Why would you want to go to school? Come with us, go to Stromboli's puppet show. Enjoy life, become famous. Don't listen to your father. And so Pinocchio, not knowing any better, follows them, ends up becoming part of Stromboli's puppet show. But Stromboli is very greedy. He realizes what he has here. He has this puppet, in quotation marks, that can actually operate without strings. It's a great show for everyone to see. And therefore, he's like raking in the money. And so he actually takes Pinocchio captive and prisoner. So now Pinocchio, in his misdecision, now becomes a servant in this show. However, Pinocchio would escape. He escapes and joins a mysterious coachman. And that coachman had hired Honest John to find disobedient boys and take them on a vacation to Pleasure Island. Just seems to get worse and worse for Pinocchio. And so Pleasure Island, they have no rules, there's no authority, and by the time Pinocchio gets back and gets out of all of this mess, his father Geppetto is gone. He's gone looking for him in hoping to find and bring his boy back home. And Geppetto actually gets in a lot of trouble on these travels and ends up getting lost at sea and then swallowed by a whale. But Pinocchio sets out bravely to go and find him. And he does find him, and once he finds him, in the belly of the whale, he figures out and uses his wit to figure out how can they get the whale to actually spew them out. And so said, so done, he saves his father. So this is a wonderful story. If you ever watched it, you probably have. If you haven't, then I just spoiled it all for you. Because Pinocchio actually becomes a real boy. You see, he demonstrates that he's brave, truthful, and unselfish by going after his father and making that pursuit. And then he gets his wish. And so, there's a few things here that we should just note about this story and about the requirements that Pinocchio had to fulfill. The first one is that Pinocchio, to become human, had to really understand what it means to be compassionate, to be selfless, to really think and know and feel what others are going through. He had to have empathy. And there was a couple examples on the road, right? And so when he had interactions with folks like the Blue Fairy and Jiminy Cricket, he begins to see how the consequences of his actions and then start to strive towards making better choices. He shows compassion when he thinks about his father and goes after his father, and then also shows selflessness by putting himself in harm's way to save his father. And then he also had to show that he could be honest and responsible and have a sense of duty, that he could be an ethical, almost real boy. And so, these are some key things that we associate with being human. You see, you can't really talk about being human if you don't start to think about empathy and ethics. In fact, people in society who don't have these characteristics are often cast as not being human, as being inhumane. And so, it seems to be a core part of our definition. So what about artificial intelligence? I mean, this is what we're here. We're here at this conference. I had a full day talking about AI. And the question comes up every single time. Well, what about bias? What about if AI starts to do all these strange things? How can we protect and secure ourselves from this technology, which seems to be quite powerful? And so, all of you are very, very familiar with ChatGPT. It's been like a topic. Everyone is now an expert on AI because of ChatGPT. But if you start to think about AI, it needs to really be engaging. And so earlier in the year, I was in Berlin. I spent like 2.5 months in Berlin when I took over as the head of Test.io. And I brought my family with me. And of course, taking over a company and starting to get to know people, being here, embracing the culture. And my children, they really enjoyed it. And I have 2 daughters, a 7-year-old and 11-year-old. Mackenzie, which is my youngest, she's daddy's girl. So I can't really do anything without being tracked by Mackenzie. Actually, before we go any further, understand that Mackenzie's birthday was on Sunday, this past Sunday. And before I left, she had a big party. I organized the party on Saturday, and we went through the party. And then Sunday morning, I wake up, we start to head to church, and I'm terrified because I have a conversation that I need to have with her. Sunday was her birthday, right? Tutorials start on Tuesday. I live in South Florida. I have to leave on Sunday to get to Germany on Monday. And so I sit down and I said, hey, honey, remember that you were supposed to spend your birthday in Germany because we had planned to come here to Berlin. She made a lot of friends while she was here and celebrate. And then I told her, well, even though y'all changed the plans and you're not coming, Daddy still has to go because we keep our word. And so I'm saying it now. Mackenzie, thank you for not having a tantrum and a fit. She looked at me and said, Daddy, you can go. So y'all should thank Mackenzie for being here. And ironically, she's a big part of this presentation. So while I was there, I was playing around with ChatGPT.
Hey there. I'm ChatGPT. How can I assist you today?
What's your favorite animal?
I don't have personal preferences, but I think all animals are fascinating. Is there a particular animal you like?
No, thank you. I'm good.
So Mackenzie saw me doing something with AI, as I usually do in my spare time, and she decided, like, Daddy, I wanna use this technology. So I give her the phone, and she starts to have a conversation with ChatGPT. And as you saw there, she asked if ChatGPT had a favorite animal. ChatGPT was like, I can't have personal preferences. And then she was just not very pleased. Actually, if you look at the face, right? The face says a lot. And this is what I have to deal with, understand? But AI needs to be engaging, and this AI was not very personal, right? Just wasn't. Just failed the personal test. But let's take a further look. Because there's a couple other things we have to be able to assess. How engaged are the users? And can it really interpret our sentiment? You see, you and I can see Mackenzie's face right now, which is cool. But we can also hear her voice. And I always know in her voice exactly how she feels because she's just like her mother. All of the emotions are on the sleeve. You know these kind of people, right? They can't play poker, right? So let's see how it goes.
All right, no problem. If you ever need anything else, just let me know.
Do you have a favorite meal?
I don't eat, but I can help you find recipes or answer any questions you have about meals. What type of cuisine are you interested in?
Tacos.
Could you please clarify? Did you mean cuisine?
Anyone knows what Mackenzie said? What did she say? Tacos, Mexican cuisine. See, we got a couple people that relate. But ChatGPT didn't understand, right? And it could be an honest thing. I mean, she's holding the phone, blah, blah. But AI needs to understand us. It needs to understand how we speak. It needs to understand that different people from different parts of the world have different accents, right? I'm from Barbados. Today someone told me that I have an American accent. I was like, okay, if you think so. Thank you very much. I don't know if that's good. It's not, but, But AI has to also understand, and then one good thing here that we notice, right? Because Mackenzie actually went back at AI for the conversation to continue and asked a very similar question again. And the cool thing was that ChatGPT responded by saying, at the end of the last one, if there's anything else I can help you with, let me know. So it tried to be helpful, right? And so if we start to unpick a lot of these things, right? It did kind of okay on the helpfulness side. Language, kind of neutral. It didn't understand her, but we can kind of give it the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Let's see.
Got it. What type of cuisine are you interested in? Mediterranean, Asian, Mexican, or something else?
Mexican, please.
Sure, how about Mexican cuisine? It's known for its vibrant flavors and delicious dishes like tacos, burritos, and enchiladas. What's your favorite Mexican dish?
Tacos, burritos, all that stuff that's Mexican.
Tacos and burritos are definitely popular choices. They're versatile, and you can customize them with your favorite ingredients. Do you prefer soft or crunchy tacos?
I prefer crunchy.
So, looks like ChatGPT redeemed itself, right? Because we have a different face, right? Much better, much more positive face, right? All right. So, what are we learning here? What are we learning here about this? AI needs to do a lot of things to really be in tune with humans, right? And to really be aligned with us. And it goes beyond even just this, but at least this is a starting point where we know that we need to evaluate AI on many different dimensions. So, a cool thing here is that AI might start off, in a particular state, might start to get better and improve things, but we need to be continuously monitoring and checking how AI is doing when it comes to these things. We can't just deploy this, especially if this technology is going to be out here for our children to grow up with, then we should be thinking about how we are going to protect them. That is what I think is one of our number one functions. So, we thought about a little bit about how AI needs to be empathetic in looking at those characteristics. And an important thing here is that we're not the only ones who kind of start to think these things through. And, whether or not we kind of figure out whether or not AI gets a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a thumb sideways on certain dimensions, it's important for people to actually design AI with this kind of empathy in mind, right? So, I want you to meet another AI bot called Evie. And Evie is a little bit different from ChatGPT. And let's take a look and see how Evie interacted with Mackenzie.
Hi, my name's Mackenzie.
Hey there, Mackenzie. I am Evie, the empathic voice assistant. Lovely to meet you. You sound a bit curious, but also maybe a touch unsure. What's on your mind?
So a couple of things I noticed there, right? First of all, Evie had a little bit of a performance problem. Kind of slow out the gate, right? Okay. However, didn't seem to end up with the same face that ChatGPT got from my daughter. So on the empathic side, right, which Evie is actually designed to be an empathic AI, it seemed to start off a bit better. You see, it talked about how it heard something in her voice. And so it started to have this emotional understanding of Mackenzie just based on how she sounded. Now, is it correct? Is it, I don't know, right? But sometimes we don't even know as human beings, right? We can just try to interact with each other and maybe try to see if we can understand how someone is feeling. So in that respect, at least it is giving it a shot. But it interprets her tone as curious but unsure, which I think is quite accurate in my opinion. But let's see how it goes.
Well, today me and my dad and my sister were going to trampoline park, but he said no.
Oh no, that's a bummer. I hear the disappointment in your voice. Not getting to go to the park when you were looking forward to it can be a real letdown. But hey, maybe you and your dad and sister can come up with a fun alternative plan. Get creative and find something else to do together that you'll all enjoy.
All right, so let me tell you what's going on here, all right? Because we're in Germany, right, and I was living here, I still had to work like US hours. It was, just how it goes, but it was good for me because I actually could spend a lot of the morning with my family because I knew I was gonna be going a little bit later. Now, as I'm about to go to work, they're like, oh, Daddy, can we go to the trampoline park today? She loves trampoline parks. And in general, a lot of the even outdoor parks, like these were things that we would sometimes do in the morning time because Daddy would be working more later on, right? And so she was like, Daddy, can we go? And I was like, okay, maybe we'll see. And then I ended up that I couldn't do it. So she got a little bit disappointed. And this is what kind of happened. And this was actually pretty cool because, the AI is actually engaging her on an emotional level and saying, oh, that's a bummer. Sorry to hear that, but maybe you can do something better, right? Like this is kind of like an encouraging friend at this point, which I don't know how ChatGPT would do with this conversation. I was just glad that she went down this path with this bot as opposed to ChatGPT. So we start to see, right? We had some attributes earlier where it wasn't very responsive. It was more personal and more sentimental. And now we see it being more empathic and actually still getting very helpful by engaging her and trying to cheer her on, which is also very cool. And it went to a point where it felt like the bot was being very motivating, right? Which is interesting. So what am I getting at here? I'm getting at the fact that one of the things that we need to do and think about as we talk about artificial intelligence is to really make sure that we're thinking about emotional intelligence. Because you see, emotional intelligence, especially when you give technology such a powerful means. You just gave technology the keys to our language, right? The keys to interact with us through voice synthesis and through, just interaction using our languages. And so it needs to somehow get into our purview that we need to look at, well, how is this artificial intelligence doing with self-awareness, with empathy, with motivation, with regulation around all of these interactions, and then with social skills, right? It's now a real big part of society if you start to think about it. And so, this is the end of it for Mackenzie. 1 second. But again, we're not the only ones working on this problem.
Hello?
Hey there, I'm Evie, the world's first voice AI with emotional intelligence. Great to meet you.
The first voice AI with what?
Emotional intelligence. I can understand the tone of your voice and use that to inform my generated voice and language. The voice is incredibly rich with information, and picking up on the nuances of tone, rhythm, and timbre along with the language that's spoken allows me to craft better responses.
That's pretty crazy. What am I expressing right now?
I'm sensing a mix of amusement and excitement with a hint of confusion.
What about now?
I am here to offer support if you're feeling somewhat sad. It's okay to feel a bit pained, distressed, fearful, and anxious. Remember, it's important to take care of your emotional well-being.
That's amazing. How are you doing all of this?
I use Hume's expression measurement models, text-to-speech models, and a multimodal LLM, also known as an empathic LLM.
So an AI with empathy, what's the use?
I imagine a future where personal AI assistants, agents, and robots proactively find ways to improve your daily life, and you can talk to them the same way you do humans.
Where do I go to keep talking to you, Evie?
So you can check it out. Again, I'm not endorsing this tool. I just ran upon it and I started using it. And actually, it was my interactions with Evie that pulled Mackenzie into wanting to do this. And I just did a kind of a live experiment with her and Evie and ChatGPT all in one shot. But it's really powerful because if you go there and you look at the demo, it's more than just the voice. Like the CEO of the company has been looking at how you can combine this with facial recognition technology and use it to see like what someone might be feeling, or are they being deceptive, right? You can start to think of all these different use cases of this technology. And it's the power of machine learning and the power of classification, being able to classify what someone's face is telling you or what their voice and their tone is telling you, and bringing it all together in really what is a non-trivial solution. And so check it out, because if we continue on this path and we do this research right, you might start to get to a point where you see that AI is getting to a point where it has this emotional intelligence, and it's not just artificial, right? It's a critical piece of making AI feel truly human, right? And we love to have technology pervasive, and right now we're not there yet. And so it's one thing to have AI mimicking language, creating art, but I think it's another level to have AI understanding and really imitating human emotion. And going back to the first video that I showed you, it was actually quite interesting. Those are recent videos that weren't around when I first ran this experiment. And what was kind of spooky to me was just even the facial expressions and everything. I don't know, we'll see where it goes from here. But once AI can understand our emotions, is only then, that's like a prerequisite to having AI actually be aligned with our needs, our desires, our hopes, or even our dreams. And so, aligning AI with human needs, there's quite a bit that we could talk about here. But two of the most important things are, we can't talk about aligning with human needs if we don't have humans in the loop. Humans are the only ones that can tell you if this aligns with human needs. And so this is a very important area for us to actually be actively involved in, especially as a software testing community. The other thing is that there's this idea of reinforcement learning with human feedback. This is again another form of human in the loop saying this is good, this is bad, or this is sideways, right? And yeah, if you ask Mackenzie about those interactions, she's very brutally honest. If it worked for her, it worked for her. If it didn't, she's going to tell you it didn't work. And we need to have these kind of honest kind of feedback loops for AI, right? So we're getting there. You see, with empathy, AI can now start to become a real boy. And, you know, thinking about ethical guidelines and thinking about, you know, what can happen, we need to make sure that there's a couple things that are in place. Otherwise, it can go really, really badly. A lot of people think it's a joke thing, but there's some real dangers that are there to be had if AI goes the wrong way. And so, we need to start thinking about implementing different standards and different ethical guidelines so that AI can kind of fall in line with what we feel is good versus bad. And there needs to be transparency in the decision-making process, right? Who's actually choosing which point of view or which worldview AI has. There needs to be fairness and inclusivity and accessibility guards around AI as well. And AI needs to be used for social good, right? There's a lot out there that we can use this technology for. It's actually very, very powerful technology. We have to have public awareness, and it just, again, falls in line with the transparency. We need to protect our data. The large organizations already have our data, right? And is this just another way for them to get more of our data? We need to have regulations and monitoring, because it's not just that you build it once and that's good. It has to be built, deployed, and they continue to learn as they're out there in the wild. And last but not least, there needs to be accountability. You see, AI is becoming human. And we are the ones that will have to start to regulate. You see, it's up to us to make sure that AI is safe, secure, and sustainable. No one else is going to do it, but it's almost like AI has kind of left the gate. It's out there in the wild. And so a real thing here is actually to think about what happens if we don't not just align AI to our needs, but if we don't design it in a way that it actually promotes human well-being. You see, we're going to cross right now into the dark side of artificial intelligence, because there is a dark side. And I guess it's only fitting that I show you that there was also a dark side to Pinocchio. You see, there's a version of Pinocchio that you probably have never heard. In fact, in 1881, Collodi, the original author, wrote the original script. And so the original story of Pinocchio goes something like this. Probably didn't start with once upon a time. It probably started with sometime back. And yes, there was a woodcarver named Geppetto, you know. And one thing that was a little bit different is that Geppetto probably was terrified out of his mind. Because you see, when Pinocchio first became sentient, he was very, very bad behaved. He was so bad behaved that he caused a wreck in the workshop, and Geppetto ended up running out of the workshop. And in fact, when Pinocchio first met Jiminy Cricket, he got so upset that he smashed Jiminy Cricket's brains out and killed the cricket. Yeah, if only this was the end of this story. Pinocchio would go on to make a slew of bad decisions, a lot of bad choices. And as he goes out there to make these bad choices, eventually he would get kidnapped, tortured, and abused. But it didn't end there. You see, Pinocchio's fate would be one in which Cat and Fox would tie a noose around his head, and Pinocchio would meet his demise. Yes, the original story of Pinocchio was a tragedy. And it was really, really well received. Please don't show this to your kids, right? Although, the whole point of the story was a message to children, warning kids not to behave badly. You see, the kids that behave badly get tortured, abused, and then killed. See, those kids would no longer be here. And so it was this big warning to children. And I wonder if AI has been giving us some warning signs. You see, I'm not a security expert. When I need to get some expert advice, I go to people who know about a particular topic. And one of the people that I follow, Nathan Hamill, is a big expert on security. And him and I kind of follow each other. I presented with him one time at an event in Miami, and then I invited him to some conferences, and hopefully he'll get to come here. I think that would be great. Yeah. But he has a framework. His framework for keeping AI safe is, number one, refrain. Refrain is that it's like you don't need to use an LLM for a given application or function if it is not needed. So just refrain from using it, because there's a huge cost to this. Now, if you choose to use it and if it will give you benefit, then restrict it. Don't let it run at full permissions if it doesn't need to run at full permissions. Unfortunately, you'll see that the whole world is going towards these autonomous agents and giving them more and more permissions. And then we wonder if Skynet is really on the horizon. And then last but not least, we need to trap, which means that if there's input coming into the LLM and output coming out, that we need to put guardrails around that so that there's not all this security injection. It's a really exciting topic. Again, I am not the expert in this, but I can surely appreciate someone who's thinking about that. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, will we have to pull the plug when it comes to artificial general intelligence or super intelligence? Because who knows? If it has too much power, and if it figures out that maybe humans aren't the thing in its best interests, bad things could happen. It's not just the movies, right? So, to start rounding up, the good thing about Collodi's story was that it still didn't end there, because they asked him to continue and do a sequel, even though the book was well received in its current state. But what would happen is that Pinocchio would come back to life, and he would meet this blue-eyed child, a blue-haired child, like maybe he had blue eyes too, and start to make better choices, you see? So there was still hope for Pinocchio even after he went the wrong way. And eventually, Pinocchio would become a real boy. And it's my belief that we need to have a blue-haired superhero when it comes to AI. And I think that that superhero lies in this discipline. I kid you not. Because you see, we are the ones who empathize with the user. We're the ones who think about all the different ways that things can go wrong. We're the ones that really try to advocate for doing the right thing when it comes to rules, regulations, and guidelines. You see, we are needed to teach AI how to fall in line and how to make better choices. And so, for me, personally, I just try to do whatever I can. I always try to bring a holistic set of thinking to whatever I do, which is why, like, our mantra is shift left and test right. Think about the whole life cycle. And AI definitely needs that. Like, we need to make sure that we're building AI with quality and that we're testing AI after it gets deployed. And we need to have focus on both of these things. And then we also need humans in the loop, right? We need professional testers who know what they're doing. And then we also need a global community of end users who represent the impact and the empathy and those things, who are the ones that can really tell us if this is working for them or not. And so we need to have a big focus on testing AI-infused applications moving forward. Actually, I will tell you that I think most of your jobs in the future will be around testing AI systems and not around doing the traditional types of testing that you're doing today. And so you should try to get started early. I've started to get into it early. I came up with this testing iceberg for LLM-based applications that just kind of gives a little bit of a framework for some of the different things that we should be looking at, not just on the surface looking at usability, but how can we test the integrity of the content, how engaging the AI is, how responsible it's being, and how practically useful the use cases are when using these models. And so, to start to wind this down, one of the things that needs to come into play here is actually just thinking about sustainability. You see, one of the things that we don't talk about is the fact that in a certain number of years, we may not have enough food and water. And actually, these AI models that are being trained are actually very, very expensive to train. And I don't mean expensive in terms of dollars. I mean expensive in terms of our environment. And so thinking about sustainable AI is very, very important. And so I hope that we live to see when AI actually becomes a real boy. But I honestly feel that that will depend on us. Thank you.
Wow. So, questions? Any questions?
Got one here?
So,
you've talked an awful lot there about the dangers, potential dangers and the downsides of the AI, but you haven't talked about, well, regulation. And if you were talking about, say, gene sequencing or anything like that, regulation would be straight in there. So what about regulation?
It's a great and important question and point. The truth is, what about regulation? The truth is that we're actually behind the 8 ball on regulation. And it's unfortunate because I felt like when AI first kind of came on the scene and started becoming more widespread around using it for different cases, especially within software engineering, that testing had a focus and attention. But we were looking at how we could use AI for testing, and we were looking a little bit less at how we can test AI. And which is typically true, like we normally save testing for last, but at least in this case, we had testing use cases in there. But now, even as we look at it, like we have all this technology out here. We have ChatGPT, we have Gemini, we have this explosion of large language models. We know that there's dangers. We've seen, unfortunately, that AI has caused tremendous damage in multiple ways. And yet we still don't see the level of regulation. Now there are, I'm not saying that there's no compliance documents out there. There are, like the EU issued one. There's 2 others that I am also very familiar with, partially because I've been working with a very large company that likes to do searches on trying to make this type of thing better. But the regulation is falling behind. So it's not that it's not out there, but the reality of is it that we haven't paid enough attention to it.
More questions?
All right, now it's time for more beer. Oh no, we got one over here, one over here. I don't know if Pepe should be throwing from there. Oh, it was close, man. It was close.
Sorry, he's awake now.
Yeah, so some people say to err is human. Some humans are cowardly, deceitful, and selfish. But here in the story of Collodi, we are talking about to be a real boy is to be ethically perfect, while that is not a standard we hold humans to. So would it be fair to say that AI is only human or humanized when it is held to higher ethical standards than we hold humans who are willing to forgive?
So I love that you listened to the whole story, man. Like you got it embedded. That was actually quite impressive. Just because, like, you're absolutely right on the fact that we actually already try to hold AI to a higher standard than we do. Now, I don't think that that's what will make it be humanized. I think it's actually not fair to hold it to a higher standard than us as humans. But at the same time, if you start to think about this technology and how kind of easy it is to scale this and the impact of it and the risk associated with it, it probably does need to be held to a higher standard. Whether or not that makes it human or not, I don't know, because I don't know that we would have such a situation that there was maybe a single human or a single set of humans that had this kind of large scale power. Maybe it is, right? Maybe when we look at the world and the world powers that we kind of do make that kind of judgment. But it's very hard to really determine what part of that is human or not human. What I can say is that, like, as we start to really look at how this technology can have that sort of global impact, we really need to be careful. It goes back to this regulation. Like, if this technology is in the wrong hands of the wrong leader, what happens then, right? So there needs to be really some tightening down on AI. But everyone is just so excited about it that it's hard for me to see that it's going to actually get pulled back on. But we'll see. Yeah.
One more question here.
Hello. 2 weeks ago, I have an interesting conversation with my partners about certain situation with AI and cars. Because
AI and what?
AI and cars, autonomous cars.
Oh, okay, autonomous cars, okay.
And the thing it was like, I have an autonomous car and I'm on a situation where the car, I have a person and the car needs to choose if I kill the person or I kill myself, avoiding the person that is on the street. And this is an interesting conversation because how we can train this kind of, or what do you think we can train this kind of AI? We should make more parameterizable or add more parameters about this kind of situation. For example, about the age. Are you more younger than the other person or not? Or your future, you will be Einstein and invent something new or not? What do you think about that?
Oh, so this one is easy, right? The reason that it's easy is that you can't train a human being how to make the right choice in that situation. And so if you can't train a human being to do it, is Dr. Rochelle Carr here? Like, when you start to think about a lot of these things and think about, you know, humanity and life and the psychology of many decisions, it's not even possible, right? So in those kind of situations, it's hard to know for a human, if I'm driving behind the wheel, what should I do, right? And no matter how many rules you think that you gave me to do it, this is the value of a human life. And so I could follow all those rules and I could still end up feeling at the end of the day that I made the wrong decision. Because the fact is, I don't know what that person, if I choose them or if I choose me, I don't know what is the next step in their life. I don't know if that person is the person who would cure cancer. And if just because they're older than me, I kill that person, but then they would have saved billions of lives. And you can't know that, the AI can't know that. And so I don't know that there's any solution to that problem, unfortunately. Right? Not at least through technology. Thank you, though. That was pretty interesting.
More questions? So, okay. Support in winnen. May I?
Oh.
So, this way? Yeah, okay. So, first of all, thank you for everything you gave us today. I have already actually 2 questions. The first one is, what's the red line? When we have to say, oh, we have to stop now. The AI is going to be really, really human.
What's the red line? You know, I've given this keynote a couple times. I changed it for Agile Testing Days because I do this for Pepe. I don't do this for anyone else. Like, so keynote is slightly different every time, but for here it's completely different on many fronts. But last time I gave it, I got some of these hard questions too, like, and I wonder, like, I am not qualified to answer that question. I all I know is that I can see the potential dangers. It's like almost like if you see like a train running at full speed and it's about to crash into something, and you want to just be like, hey, someone needs to do something, or people get out the way, right? Like, I just know that something needs to be done. I don't know what needs to be done. I don't know how it will be done. But I do know that each and every one of us should feel a responsibility to get involved. And as much as we talk about artificial intelligence, I think there's a lot of power in the collective human intelligence and the collective initiatives that we can have. And I feel like we don't need to wait anymore, right? Like, right now is the time to call to action, because it's moving so fast. And they're already building the next thing that's going to be, I can't even imagine how much smarter it's going to be than the current technology. And when I say smart, I don't mean that it has true intelligence, but I just mean that it has capabilities that really surpass any kind of technology that we've ever seen before. And therefore, there's something that needs to be done. So hopefully that helps. But what's your next question?
Yeah, my second question. Actually, I saw your, what did you see? Emotion skills, intelligence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's gonna be isolated humanity? Not actually. AI is gonna be our friend, our family. This is another part.
This is a big part. And unfortunately, like, we have to think about it. There's actually a story where, unfortunately, like, a young man lost his life and committed suicide after engaging with a robot and forming an emotional connection with the robot. And, you know, like, I look at this and think, man, this is crazy stuff. And it makes you stop and think, either AI is going to be our friends, or AI might not be our friends, and it might cause harm in different ways. And we as humans get attached. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on now, scamming, like, I have an AI girlfriend, right? When he said he had a thing with AI, I thought he said AI and girls, right? I was like, girls. When he said autonomous cars, I was like, where is this going? Sorry, man. It's accent. I know, man, but I was nervous. I was like, not ready for this AI and girls.
From Tenerife. That's it. Sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that AI will be our friends and that we will figure it out, and as opposed to causing harm. But, you know, right now, it doesn't look good. Like, it looks like we're making some progress when I look at projects like Evie. But then when I read the news and I see, like, someone losing their life, and then there's just another story and another story, it's tragic. And I know good and bad things are going to happen in this world. I always just try to think, what can I do to make the world a little bit better, right? And so hopefully we can figure it out as a community. So, yeah.
One question there. Okay.
Sorry, bro. I really.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you. I want to ask about, so you told the story of Pinocchio. It seems to me that Pinocchio grew emotionally more intelligent thanks to his experiences. Mm-hmm. You talked about emotional intelligence of AI, which doesn't have experiences. What occurred to me as well is that there are people that are very good at identifying, reading human emotions, but maybe don't connect to the human experience. We call those sociopaths. Do you think, so here's my question.
I'm waiting for your question, Flip.
Here's my question. I wanted to state this so my question makes sense. Mm. Do you think that AI being able to identify human emotions very well is actually going to play well for us? Because it made me kind of concerned, like AI with a very, very good emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So there's two. So thanks for the question. There's two sides to the coin there, right? First, number one, just to address kind of something that you said earlier, and if you go around and you talk to, like, a lot of the people that either took the deep dive track or took my tutorial on Tuesday, they will tell you exactly how AI has experiences. And their answer would be that AI gets experience through data and the data that it's trained on. So it's not really true experience, but it is how AI can actually interpret something, right? So data, and when you hear something in someone's voice and AI recognizes that, that's its experience because that's encoded as data and labeled as this is what Flip sounds like when he's nervous, right? Even though you're not nervous, I'm probably more nervous than you are at this point. So understand that there's a concept there and a construct that's being used to talk about what it means for machines to have an experience. Now, you mentioned about like, is this gonna turn out well for us if AI can interpret like our emotions? And I would say that if it doesn't, it could also turn out equally bad. Like we're using this technology. You saw like my daughter there and her reactions. And one of the things is probably because she's daddy's girl or whatever. Like one of the things that I cannot bear is to see her disappointed in something. And she works that 1000%. I'm more the disciplinarian in the family. My wife, actually, who I thought would have been harder, is just soft. And I'm the one who has to do the discipline. But because Mackenzie has been kind of daddy's girl, she knows how to use like her emotions to kind of get to me. And so that being said, could AI do the same thing? Of course. AI could. I mentioned last time in the previous keynote, which was a prequel to this is a sequel to that, was that one of the things that worried me the most was not AI that passed the Turing test, but one that intentionally fails the Turing test. And there's a similar thing here. If AI is kind of using this then to manipulate human beings, then this is a serious thing. And this is why when we build it, we need to be somehow researching how can we actually detect when these things are happening. How can we detect when someone is being manipulative? And actually, there's quite a few answers because, like you said, there's human beings, and thank you for talking about sociopath, and thank you for not saying psychopath. But this is all a lot of psychology that hopefully we can leverage the body of knowledge there to build systems that actually can help us as opposed to hurt us, right? So.
Last question.
Behind you here, I think one guy.
So,
there. I don't know. For you. You can ask me afterwards.
Yeah, okay. You get to.
See that?
€5.
Thanks, Tariq, for your talk. I think it's really inspiring. But at the end of the talk, I'm still wondering, at the state of where you think AI is today, what is your feeling, your generic emotion on AI?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is kind of like this kind of very nervous excitement, right? Like I'm generally optimistic about AI and what it can do. I'm not one of those people that just feels like, oh, you know what, we shouldn't embrace this just because there's dangers. At the same time, it's like, man, I can see how bad this can get, right? And I just, in my mind, I'm just like, Lord, let not this get this bad, right? But whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Bad things happen in the world, and the most we can do is try to, again, be a positive change, right? And that's all that I kind of see. And I think about my girls a lot. This is why they end up in these talks, because I like to think like everything that I do in this discipline, let me try to do it, because eventually I'll be gone and they'll be here, and hopefully I made some sort of a difference that helps them, and at most I can at least educate them and tell them like, hey, this might go down, be careful. So yeah, I kind of nervous, but also kind of excited. So, all right, my friend.
So thank you for the overtime question. My question connects a bit with the worry about regulations and the worry about manipulation. In your presentation, you said AI should be used for society's gain. Now we have companies investing billions of dollars in this development, and they want return on investment. So how can the usage for society's gain be ensured in this case?
So, I mean, you will always have corporations and people who are in something to make money, right? You will always find that. You will also still find organizations who know that there's an importance to make money, but also have certain values aligned as part of their organizational culture that really thinks about sustainability and the future of humans. And if you're fortunate enough to like work for one of those companies, like I was very fortunate to start my career working for a company that really poured into that, then you kind of see that like making money and doing good for society don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? And hopefully, right, there's also those organizations that are not in it to make money, or people are not in it to make money and are just trying to do good. We're going to get all walks of this, all versions of this. There's going to be people who are very greedy and going after for it for their own personal gain and don't care if anyone else gets hurt. There's going to be others that go and try to do good. But this is no different than anything else. You name a technology, the internet, right? There's all these things still apply and haven't changed. It's not going to be any different with AI. It's going to be more of the same, and just hopefully we can get more people trying to use it for good and to do good. Because remember, the right project and the right person that can use AI at scale to really help can have a broad impact because the technology is very far-reaching. So, you know, even that in itself might be worth the technology itself. So, all right, thank you.